Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. No, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this public event titled Fashion, Dress and Religion with Professor Alberto Ambrosio. As many of you know, this public event is organized by the Masters in Digital Fashion Communication, and I would say the core in the public are actually students of the Master, while we also have several guests from USI and also elsewhere, so welcome. Our Master is a double degree master program offered by USI and Sorbonne University, and the public events, this is the initiative we have started actually from the first year of the Master, and usually we organize 2-3 events per semester, so you're more than welcome to join us in the upcoming events as well. I hope you will enjoy the evening, and I will give now the floor to Professor Cantoni, who will introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadia. So, welcome everybody, also from my side. Super happy and thankful to the colleague Alberto Fabio Ambrosio. The story is like that. A friend from Italy several months ago told me, oh, have you seen that there's this book titled Dio tre volte sarto, which means God 3 times tailor, but yeah, in the Italian language, sarto sounds like saint, so it's like 3 times saint. And as you might know, I have troubles with pronouncing the R, so for me, pronouncing sarto and santo is almost the same. So the friend was joking, but I got it, I read the book and said I must meet the author, and so we organized, we had an email exchange and then a short video conference, and I'm happy that, Alberto, you accepted to come here and teach us. So Alberto is currently Professor of Theology and History of Religions at the Luxembourg School of Religion and Society, and does a lot of other things you might have read, and please you add whichever element you believe is important. And is a specialist, especially in 2 religious traditions. One is the Muslim Sufi tradition, especially in Turkey, and he has lived several years there, speaks the language and does a lot of research over there, and in the Christian Catholic religion, and he himself is a Dominican brother himself. So thank you for accepting, thank you for opening this incredible field of research about fashion, dress, and religion. Our students from the Master in Digital Fashion Communication, they know that on the one side it's very important to know the last gadgets and the new incredible bleeding edge trends in the field of fashion and its communication, but on the other side it's very important to have this longue durée approach and understand the role of fashion within culture at large and within every culture. So thank you, Alberto, for being here, and we are looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cantoni, and really good evening, everybody. I would like really to thank you because he was really open-minded in regard with this thematic, this problematic, this interaction between theology, dress, and religion. My speech today would combine 2 lines, 2 dimensions. The first one is my ego histoire, my ego history in terms of academics. And from my background, academic background, I try to show you the importance of interaction between fashion, dress, and religion. So as Professor Cantoni said, I spent 11 years in Turkey, in Istanbul, working on doing researches on Sufism, Ottoman and Turkish Sufism, that is the mystical dimension of Islam. And I think it was in 2010, I was in a traffic jam in Istanbul, and I could take this picture that for me is quite inaugural, in a way, of my topic about fashion and religion. As you can see, there is a hijab woman, a woman with her hijab, totally black, of course, and in front of the Theodosian walls of the ancient Constantinople. And of course, we are, for me, it was a kind of symbolical opposition of two traditions, the Christian tradition and the Muslim tradition, but behind the woman there was the modernity with this scar. So for me, this a picture is a way to imagine, to represent the opposition between tradition, religious tradition, and religious tradition in dress, and of course the modernity. As you probably know, some historians, but not all of the historians, say that fashion system begins with the modernity. 16th century, we are in Versailles, in Paris, and the fashion as we consider it begins at this time. Not all of the historians think that the fashion begins really at this time, because all culture, all tradition have their own fashion. So since this moment, I began to reflect, to consider that fashion and dress have an important interaction. Working on Ottoman Sufism and Turkish Sufism, I was always interested in the dress of these monks, these whirling dervishes. As you can see, this is a performance of the Sema. The Sema is a mystical performance of Sufis, or better said, whirling dervishes. And you can see, and the first picture is from 14th century, and again, these whirling dervishes, these dervishes are in a way very different from other Muslim people, even in terms of dress. Let me say just few words about the whirling dervishes' symbolical explanation of the dress. So you can see a white habit, a white dress. This white dress represents the shroud of the death. As maybe you know, as maybe you have heard, Muslim people are buried with a white shroud. And then whirling dervishes wearing white dress represent, with the performance of the Sema, with this ritual, a mystical death. And we can conclude in this case that religious dress is very important. The religious dress represents something. That's why I was very influenced by the religious dress of Muslim people, and especially Ottoman and Turkish Sufism. And we can see whirling dervishes, contemporary whirling dervishes in Konya. Konya is in the midst of Turkey. Konya is also iconium of St. Paul, the Apostle, so very important city in Turkey. And you can even see the performance of the Sema. So Muslim tradition led to me to think about fashion, especially when I came back in Europe. I live between Paris and Luxembourg, and in Paris I live in the Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. The major street of the fashion capital of Paris. not exactly where the boutiques are. Well, Muslim tradition, Muslim Turkey with its dress, with its tradition, and then coming back to Europe and to Paris and the capital of fashion, led to me to think that fashion is probably what modernity and what Europe had, invented in a way. Have you heard this question, Orientalistic question? Fashion is a Western product or a cultural product everywhere? This is the point. At the time when I used the former picture, I used this picture for my inaugural lesson in Luxembourg 4 or 5 years ago. At the time, I was still working on Islam and also in Islam in Europe. I finished this lesson with this question: is fashion a Western product or a human product? It's a political problem. And if I say that fashion is much more Europe, Western-oriented, or grounded in Western country, it's not a good politically said relations. So I had this question, but I lived in Turkey, and I saw that in Turkey or in Oriental countries, there's no exactly the same tradition, the dress tradition. And especially for Turkey, Atatürk, who is the founder of modern Turkey, banned the Oriental dresses in 1925. He decided to reform the dresses, a real law. Imagine tomorrow you have your parliament or your governments asking you to dress in a different way. Europe knew this with the sumptuary laws. So the question of religion and fashion is not just nothing, it's very important, because religion is a part of the tradition, and tradition could be against or in favor of fashion. So I decided 4 years ago to build a new research project, in regard with interaction between fashion, dress, and religion. So 2018, in Metropolitan Museum of New York, there was this inaugural exhibition, Heavenly Bodies, on fashion and Catholic imagination. How the fashion designers were influenced by art Catholic tradition. It's inaugural because Andrew Bolton, the director, got the problem. There are a number of elements in Western fashion inspired by Catholic tradition. But my point didn't come from this exhibition, but it was at the same time. Here you can see, the tradition of fashion, contemporary fashion, and again, next one, please. Coming from Muslim studies, Islamic studies, there was another problem. Muslim fashion that is called modest fashion. And modest fashion actually even in Western countries, in Europe and in the United States, is a real market. So modest fashion leads to think about the idea of modesty that is a part of the religious discourse and the religious practices. fashion must be modest or not, and in which way must be modest or not. Just in terms of covering some parts of our body, maybe, but also in other terms, in ethical terms, in environmental terms. This is a second point. The first point is theology of Christian theology of dress and fashion. Next one. This is an exhibition in 2018, 2019 in San Francisco, and Reina Lewis was the curator of this exhibition on contemporary Muslim fashions. That is a quite important part of the market today. Well, this is the ego history, and in my research project, there are 3 levels. The first one is my background, let me say the background with interaction with Islam. The first dimension of a research between religion and fashion is a theology. What is theology? That's the problem. If I consider theology as a reflection, a religious discourse on God and on society, I can imagine as a Catholic theologian to say something about dress and fashion. In 17th century, preachers, Catholic preachers, but Protestants did the same, were against fashion, against the idea of a novelty. Is not fashion grounded in the idea of novelty? I think so. New collection. All the time new collection. Isn't it? But let me say that the idea of a new collection, the idea of a novelty, I would be a little bit, maybe it's a kind of provocation, but it's a totally Christian idea. Christianity is the religion of the novelty. That's why, in my opinion, fashion is grounded in Western culture, because in Western culture, the Jewish and Christian tradition has focused their energy on the idea of novelty. So, we can do a kind of Christian theology of fashion, or a religious understanding of dress and fashion. So the first level of this pair, fashion and religion, is theology. What can I say as theologian? What a Christian can say about dress? What can say about fashion? But a Muslim too, and Jews, of course, and Buddhists. Not just because there are religious dresses. Let me stress the difference. I'm not talking about religious dresses. With the first pictures, yes. It's a religious discourse on dress and fashion. And I could write the first book that is now in French with a lot of pictures. And this the first level of my research is a Christian theology of dress and fashion. Please. You see, this is a Valentino. This is a Valentino wedding robe. What did he say? What did he do with the evening robe, the right one? You can see Adam and Eve at the time of Genesis, where God himself has produced skin tunics after the original sin. And the other one, the left one, is a wedding robe. And the wedding robe, as we can see afterwards, is also an idea of the elected people in paradise. The cover of Vogue in 1935, the red jacket of this woman, it led to think about the red jacket, the red tunic of Jesus. I just put two pictures, but you can find thousands about Jesus with the red tunic. Simone Martini, and the other one is Lotto. So you see, even in the cover of Vogue in 1935, we can imagine that there are interactions, influences. This is another point. It's not just theology of fashion, but the interaction between fashion and tradition, artistic and religious tradition. And again, this red, it's an oriental dress, of course, but in this oriental and red dress, there are a lot of influences, cultural influences. Who did this? Is quite known as Yves Saint Laurent, who the first one introduced the wedding dress at the end of a catwalk. Why? As I was saying before, the wedding dress, a wedding white dress, it reminds the idea of the elected people in the afterlife, according, of course, to the Christian theology. Yves Saint Laurent was Catholic, of course. And probably, it's my hypothesis, I'm not sure, but he introduced the idea that a catwalk, a défilé, must finish with a wedding dress. So you see the analogy, as the catwalk finishes with a wedding dress, our life, our dress in the afterlife, in the everlasting life, is a wedding dress. So we are moving in another level of interaction between fashion and religion. The first point was theology of dress. The second, the interaction between fashion designer or fashion system and religious elements. The third one that I'm more and more developing is fashion considered as religion. Pierre Bourdieu, an very important French sociologist, wrote in 1974 that sociology of religion today must be researched in sociology of fashion. In this book that will come up in 2 weeks, I tried to establish the relation, the analogy, the metaphor between religious system and fashion system. Fashion system as religious system as a doctrine. For example, novelty. You must produce new collection, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a year. Who said this? There is a kind of imagination of fashion, exactly as religious doctrine. But fashion has also its own rituals, catwalk. A catwalk, in a way, is a secularized religious procession, a pilgrimage, but in a secularized country and a secularized tradition. And finally, the third part of my reflection of this book, of the analogy between religion and fashion, is aesthetics and ethics. Fashion, as a religion system, has its own aesthetics, has its own ethics. So this is the real new unpublished idea that fashion can be considered and can be studied as a system of beliefs. Fashion in religious time, so I conclude, I resume, 3 dimension, fashion in religious system. So I'm not dressed in this time as a priest, but I'm a priest also. So religions are also in fashion. Second level is interaction, cultural interaction between fashion and religions. And third level, third dimension, fashion considered as religion. Thank you very much for your attention.